Hello again, and welcome back to today's discussion, where we'll be discussing database mirroring, more specifically about how to create a database mirroring application in the developer portal, and all of the little things that you're going to need to know about it when creating and deploying it. Joining me together today is once again my colleague, Margareta. Hello, Margareta.
Hi, we're back. One of the most, this is actually one of the favorite apps, I think, for people. There are so many of them. So having this as a video would be great. Just explaining the tiny bits and things you have to get in.
So go ahead and would you tell us exactly what we need to do in order to get database mirroring set up?
Yes. So for those of you who have seen our other videos, we have Stark Industries, and they now want to have a copy of their database to perform some additional hard API.
Data warehousing, backend processing.
That's the one, yes. So we'll create an app for it. And we have this template ready for it, custom database mirroring. Now, since it's custom, it will automatically tick this one. And you just have to give it a name. So I will call it database mirroring.
Is there a special naming convention that we should give it?
I like it to be kept with a name of the company and that it's the database mirroring in some way, because it makes it easier for the one who is supposed to authorize it inside our operations center to pick the correct one.
So database mirroring for, and then name of your company is a pretty good standard.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the next one. So the endpoint here is important and required. This one has to be public and to the complete mirroring URL. So you would probably like to either set it up or have it prepared, knowing where you will put it. You could change this URL after. So for now, I will just add in my Stark industries.com /
database mirroring. Oh yeah, mirroring.
Client service SVC. It's SVC.
.svc because it is a IIS hosted SOAP service.
Has to be secure.
HTTPS.
Yeah. Now for it actually to start sending information, it has to be on. For now, I will leave it off. And then it takes me as I'm logged in. So I now have the app configuration set up for SOAP, but I still need a bit more information. So if you go to GitHub and SuperOffice, GitHub/SuperOffice, we have pinned this code example here.
Right, so the devnet-database-mirroring repository contains the source code for a database mirroring client or service, actually, that SuperOffice will push all of the database to replicate towards.
And you've been so nice that you have built it, compiled it, so it's just to download the zip file.
Right, so we've gotten a lot of, we've seen actually people deploy it inside IIS, just inside the folder structure that was available inside the source folder, which is not the way to do it. It should be a compiled representation of that Visual Studio project. So we share the project and the source code with you so it can be modified on demand based on what your requirements are. But in 95% of the cases, no modifications are required whatsoever. So we went ahead and compiled that for you, made it available as a zip file, and then that's all you got to do is download this on the IIS server where you're going to be hosting the service. Unzip it and then create an IIS application that points towards this directory.
So you have this private key and the web.config, which is you pick up the information from the developer portal to get these unique keys for your mirroring app. Then in this app data folder, you have the SuperOffice federated login certificate for our production environment. And everything else is pretty much set up, except you have to get the private key and pick it from the developer portal. And in the web config, you add in the client ID. So let's go to the developer portal. Now, this will just be published to production. So I will just keep one value. So this will be my application ID in the web config file. It's this one, SO app ID.
Yep.
So I pick this one. And maximize. And then you see the super ID certificate points to the production environment.
Yep, and we see just above there you have 2 commented out for the development and stage environments. Then in green on line 9 through 13. Production is the default.
Yes. And then this will be the name of your database. So whatever you want to call it, like mirror, or it's all up to you. Now, if you leave this one, it will pick the correct context ID of the tenant who this app will be authorized on.
So we do recommend that you don't change this. We do recommend that you leave it with like a name underscore and then leave context ID, because every database that's made it, maybe you're going to want this database mirror to work for more than just one tenant. And if that's the case, then you'll get a database created automatically for each one of those tenants that will have a suffix of that context identifier. Right.
And then the connection base is for your SQL server. And database username and password must be a user with create database rights.
Yep. So yes, this IIS application will have to have access to the database, and let's be specific, SQL Server database, Microsoft SQL Server database that it will be used to create these databases in. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And then it refers to this private key text. And the private key is the private key from the certificate here.
Right. So this will be the XML RSA key that we generate. And we want to copy the private one, because when we save it, that will be deleted from, or it will not be saved inside SuperOffice. It will only be saved inside the database mirroring responsible, right? That person is supposed to save it. Whoever's creating this application has to save that private key somewhere. Here is where it's going to be expected for that application.
Yeah, so just paste in the complete one.
Yeah.
And
save it. And then the normal user, you would save that, and then it would be saved, and then IIS would be able to have access to it with that value.
Mm-hmm. So now you have the private key, the SO app ID for in web config. You just save all the settings. And as long as this is actually the complete URL to where you have set up this mirroring client on your IIS, you should enable it. And then the app configuration is actually ready.
Mm.
And you could request it to be published. Now, to get it published to production, you have to go through stage. this will again then create this ticket, which automatically send out the response saying that if you're not an employee of the company you want this set up to, you have to actually forward it to them, so they let us know that they want this mirroring app set up on their tenant. As an external consultant, that's not for something you should.
So when I click on request publish, that's going to send a message to SuperOffice internally. We'll see that somebody's being requested to enable this mirror. If it's not the same, a person with the same email address or subdomain for the company that they're trying to create this for, then you'll send them another email. There'll be another exchange to actually get authorization from somebody who works or is an administrator at that company.
Yeah.
Okay.
So once that is, it's the same as with the other app. We check all the settings, and then we will, yeah. So this one will also end up in this pending request. And we will see it's for Stark Industries. We will check that the license, because this is a separate license for the mirroring, that they have it, that all the settings are there. So you have the client ID and the certificate. The secret is not in use here, it's just the client ID and the certificate private key.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually run this quickly through the SSL labs to verify that it supports TLS 1.2.
Yep.
Yeah. And since send error email, it will, when we authorize it, and our operations center tries to send the database copy. If for some reason your side is not correctly set up, it will send error email to this report email. So I will take this email address and paste it in here. We could add more, so whenever it fails in any way, we will send automatic emails to this list of email addresses.
Is that a comma separated list, so we can have multiple emails in that same?
Yeah, semicolon separated.
Semicolon.
Yeah. So I think Stark at starkindustries.com also will get one.
Okay.
Then we have to approve it all the way to production.
Just for the sake of having to say it out loud, this is something that you will be doing, or somebody internal in SuperOffice will be doing. Yeah, this will not be the person who just requested to have this published. We'll see. This is what happens on the inside. Yep. Okay, so you've now published it all the way through production.
Yeah, and at this time we can go to Stark Industry in our operations center and enable the app, so it will start sending sending a copy of the database mirror. And the first thing it then does is it has this authentication dance. It verifies that the app ID and the private key match what it finds in this these settings.
Mm-hmm.
And if there are any problems, we do have a troubleshooting section on Docs.
Yep.
So that's fine. Directly database mirroring we remove. And troubleshooting.
Mm-hmm.
What do we most often see? For those running in Azure, it's the override of the certificate. So if they host IIS for themselves, they could install the certificates. That's not Is it even possible on Azure?
Great question. It used to not be, but I believe that they did enable it. So certain Azure subscriptions do have access to a certificate store that people can configure, but that's not my area of expertise. But what we do recommend and what is included in the default binary download, right, in the release from the GitHub repo, that's not necessary. The way that it works is it uses the local certificates in the file structure. So it's going to look inside the app data folder and try and find the SuperOffice federated login certificate for for the configured environment. So I don't know if we covered it yet, but you want to change the certificate if you're going to change the environment. So as you saw Margareta talk about in the very beginning, by default, it's set up for production. And inside the app data folder, we have different folders for each one of the different environments, and each one of those folders contain the SuperOffice federated login certificate for that environment. So if you happen to want to run database mirroring for a stage environment customer or tenant, then you would go ahead and take the stage certificate, copy it, and then paste it into the root of the app data folder and overwrite the one that's there by default, which again is the production one. So I believe that's documented in the README, and it's also sort of annotated here with the notes commented out.
And then you have to uncomment the stage key.
That's right. Uncomment the stage key from line 10 and 11, and then, or no, sorry, from 12, and then comment out the line 14, which is the production. Yeah. Let's see. Anything else, Margareta?
Anything else?
Errors? Do we?
Errors?
Should we see some errors at this point?
Once it's been approved, yeah, that's when you could start getting error messages, error emails to the email address set up here. And it would give you some indication as to what is wrong. What we have seen is this, what's it called again? You said it once, if you just flip it to false or true or something. Do you remember it?
Oh, the 404. I
Yeah.
think the 404 is the most common error that we see, and that is the security transport element. So if you take a look at the default installation, you have that open. I thought you held, yeah, right there. So if we scroll down to the bottom, so on line 48, it is commented out by default. But if for some reason you get a 404 exception, then you would uncomment that out, save it, and then wait a couple of minutes, and it will try again. And you shouldn't get any more 404 errors after that. We haven't determined what's going on in IIS and the different types of servers, when it needs to be enabled or when it needs to be disabled. It's I don't know if it's a patch, a Microsoft security patch thing or what, but on a majority of installations, it works by having that commented out. But on some servers, don't know if it's the newer ones or the older ones, they need to have it uncommented to work. Coming back to the GitHub repo, there is database mirroring, and this is the code that shows you how the database mirroring service works. But if you want to know more about how the database mirroring certificates stuff works and the security around it, if we scroll down to or underneath find repositories on the middle of the page there's a search page. Yeah, just type in database mirroring or just database and then enter. you'll get database mirroring authentication. Now that repo goes in explicit detail that discusses exactly what that authentication dance is Margareta was talking about in the very beginning. If you click on source folder and then one more time, click on database mirroring authentication, there's a README in there. So if you just scroll down, that README file goes through exactly how this example is configured and what the RSAXML keys are, how that plays in as and together with certificates. It's very interesting to see. A bit of a dive off the cliff here is that the database mirroring authentication routine starts off by SuperOffice looking at your application, serializing and signing some of the information about it, including a nonce, sends that to the service, which the service then uses the public SuperOffice certificate to verify or validate it that it did, in fact, that request for authentication came from SuperOffice. It contains the correct information that it expects. All of that's detailed in here, what information is expected. And then the client or your database mirroring service is expected to sign its own representation of similar information and send that back to SuperOffice. Once that whole flow has successfully completed, then SuperOffice will begin sending database mirror data to your service.
But one more thing, because what we do send over is like a subset of your database tables. There is a list of the blacklisted tables, but in addition, you can actually say, I don't need the EOD messages sent to my mirror, and we don't use that for anything. And in the admin client now, under global preferences, you can say, I want to exclude this table. And it's a comma separated list, so if you don't want the log events or any other table, you just fill it in, and the next time it mirrors, it will just exclude these tables.
Nice. What's the default batch size?
So the default
1 million records?
Yep. And you can exclude tables, but you can't say, but I in addition want this table. So the blacklisted table are really blacklisted, and you could choose to exclude even more.
Okay. Where can we see information about what data is not replicated?
That would be on docs. In the overview, you would see, is the mirror database an exact copy? And it has a complete list of tables that are replicated and which are not replicated. So typically, we don't replicate tables which have like credentials or username, password, or mail account. Like security information is not replicated.
Excellent.
Excellent. Just one more thing, because sometimes, every night we do a recycle of the application pool, and if there, for some reason, is just one error email coming to you, then it's probably not a problem. However, this customer task that mirrors the database to your side runs like every 20 minutes. So if you keep getting these emails every 20 minutes, it's actually time to do something and check what's really wrong there.
What would be the best way to follow that up? Would it be to go into the dev portal on their application and submit a request via the chat or email?
If the error email doesn't provide you with enough information as to how to solve this, then you could use this chat or just send a support request, and it typically ends up with someone able to assist.
Okay, great. Contact us via that chat or send us an email at appdev@superoffice.com with their context identifier and application ID.
I love it if they just copy the URL, because that would take me directly into the app's configuration and I don't have to search. I'm lazy.
Excellent. A lot of great information. Thanks a lot, Margareta, for helping us walk through creating up a database mirroring inside the developer portal. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And you notice now it says apps because now Stark Industries have more than one. Huh?
Apps. Excellent. So that's working with database mirrors inside the developer portal, kind of what's expected on how you would go about configuring it, setting up the certificates correctly, as well as changing anything necessary inside the web config file. If you have any other questions about it, please do follow it up, create an issue inside GitHub, or submit a question on the community forums underneath the technical section, or send an email at appdev.superoffice.com. Appreciate it. Bye for now.